Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I'm back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation that I've received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number one. Nick, what's the biggest mistake most people make when trying to build muscle? The biggest mistake, because there's a few mistakes. I think there's a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings when it comes to adding solid lean muscle onto your frame. Okay. One is that you have to eat tons of protein. Okay. Not true. You have to eat a moderate amount of protein. So if you're someone who is, say, 150 pounds, you might want to consume anywhere from 200 and let's say 25 grams of protein to 300 grams of protein per day. This will obviously depend on your activity level. Are you in the gym 3 days a week, 6 days a week, 5 days a week? Are you doing vigorous training? Are you doing low impact training? So it really depends on the person. But you don't need to consume 500 grams of protein. Okay. If anything, that can become detrimental to your kidneys. Another misconception out there is that you have to lift super heavy to put on muscle. Not true. Okay. If anything, you want to make sure that you're keeping your reps between those 10 to 15 rep range, keeping the volume high, as in your sets, your reps, your exercise selection, minimal rest period. Okay. But it's not training with the utmost amount of weight. Because if you look at people who train with the utmost amount of weight, those are typically powerlifters. And even though powerlifters are strong, aesthetically, they don't look super muscular, right? They don't have that solid, lean, dense, sculpted muscle that you see on a bodybuilder, right? So it's not about how much weight you lift in the gym. There have been numerous times over years someone says to me, "How much do you bench?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't calculate how much I bench because it changes. Because if I start my chest workout off with bench press, well, I'm obviously going to be able to maybe I'll bench 225. But if I finish my workout off with the bench press, which I do tons of times, then I might finish doing 135. So it varies on what workout I'm doing. So I don't pay attention to how much I'm lifting. And the same thing with my clients. Like I have an idea of what people start with, but the goal is not to keep increasing the weight. Okay. That's the goal of a power lifter. So that's another misconception. It's, too much weight. So too much protein, too much weight. Another one is that you have to use steroids. Not true. Okay. And not recommended. Again, unless you are a professional bodybuilder, someone who does this for a living, there's no reason for you to be taking steroids. And you can build muscle as a natural lifter. You don't need to be an enhanced lifter. Okay. So if you want to still build a solid foundation and you want to build an aesthetically pleasing physique, you want to do it naturally. And I'll tell you why. Because if you do it naturally, everything that you build, you'll keep. If you do it enhanced, as in you're using steroids and you go on a big steroid cycle, you're going to put on a lot of muscle. You say you go on a 16, 24-week cycle, you're going to put on tons of muscle for sure, especially if you're eating right. But then when you come off that cycle, what happens? You lose a lot of those gains. Okay. And I see that time and time again. So I guess what I'm saying is people think you have to do too much protein, too much weight, too much drugs. Not true. Okay. Everything in moderation. And I truly believe that, especially as I get older now, is that the reason I believe I've been able to last so long in this game, injury free, and continuing to make progress with both my physique and my health is because I've kept my foot on the gas, but I haven't gone from 0 to 100. I'm cruising. Okay. That means that I'm not trying to set constant PRs in the gym, personal records for those that don't know what PRs are. Okay. That means that I'm not trying to destroy my kidneys by consuming 800 grams of protein a day. Okay. And that means that I'm not sticking needles in my butt 3, 4 times a week, trying to get as big as I possibly can from using anabolic steroids. Okay. So moderation is key. And remember that it's not about doing too much. Okay. If anything, too much usually leads to injuries, health issues, and problems down the road. All right. Okay. Nick, how should someone train differently for aesthetics versus strength? Okay, so when you're looking at aesthetics, right, which is in my opinion, why most people train, right? A lot of people go to the gym for the health benefits, of course, but I think people will be lying and say, well, I don't care what I look like. I'm like, well, of course you care what you look like. You're going to the gym. And if, like I said, if vanity gets you into the gym, great. Okay, that's great. But you need to have a long-term goal. But it's okay to be a little bit vain and say, no, you know what? I want to build nice arms. I want to build rounded delts. I want to have a slimmer waist, and that's okay. Okay. So if you're training for aesthetics, my recommendation is to train like a bodybuilder. Okay. Why? Because bodybuilders, whether you're a man or a woman, you're being judged on stage for your physique, how you look, not how much you lift, not how hard you train, purely how you look. Okay. So you're going to be training in that 10 to 15 rep range. You're going to want to include lots of drop sets, lots of supersets. You're going to want to do circuit training, right? You're going to do some basic straight sets. Okay. But your general rule of thumb is you're going to want to train with high volume, minimal rest periods in between sets. Okay. Focus on full range of motion. So you're really focusing on the eccentric and concentric phase of every single exercise you do. Whereas a power lifter, their main objective is to just get as strong as possible. So you're training purely for strength, not for the aesthetics. In this scenario, you're going to want to keep your rep range between 1 to 3. Some powerlifters will go up to even 6 reps, right? In the off season, if they're trying to hit PRs, so they'll go a little bit lighter and they'll go a little bit higher in reps, but usually no more than 6 reps, okay? Because I believe at most powerlifting meets, the rep ranges are between 1 to 3. Again, though, the objective of a powerlifter is to just lift as much, excuse me, as much weight as possible. Okay. So you're going to be keeping those reps between 1 to 3, occasionally up to 6, but you're not going to be doing 10 to 15 reps. You're going to take longer rest periods. Okay. You're not going to be training with as much volume. You might only have 3 exercises in your whole workout, bench press being one, squats being the other, deadlifts being the third. Okay. Because those are the 3 main lifts in powerlifting meets, right? So if you're training to be a powerlifter, you're training for pure raw strength, those are the compound lifts you're going to want to focus on. So that's mainly the difference between the two, right? And it's fine if you want to be a powerlifter or you want to train purely for strength. That's okay. And if you want to train like a bodybuilder and train more for the aesthetics and for the health benefits, that's fine too. Okay. If you're going to ask me which one I believe from a health component is better, I would go with the bodybuilding only because you are getting more volume into your workouts. You're resting very minimal rest periods in between sets, and you're doing tons of different planes and ranges of motion with a wide variety of exercise selection. So I believe that bodybuilding training is more healthy than powerlifting. Okay, but both are good. If you're in the gym and you're training, that's better than sitting at home on your ass. All right. Okay, Nick, what's your opinion on training to failure? Every set or not? I had this same question a few weeks ago on the Q&A, but I'll answer it again. It's a good question. I don't believe in training to failure. And I've honestly never trained to failure. And the reason why is that I'm a firm believer that there's only so much tension that you can put on your muscle bellies. Okay. So you don't want to put pressure on your joints, your tendons, and your ligaments. And in order to do that, you want to make sure that you're keeping that tension where it needs to be. So let's, for example, let's say you're doing a bent over barbell row. Well, we know that's going to work your upper lats, right? Well, if you're doing a reverse grip barbell row, that's going to be work your lower lats. But if you're doing a pronated row, that's going to work your upper lats. Okay. At the end of the day, you're working your lats. So in order to keep the tension on the lats, you're going to want to keep those reps between 10 to 15 with a weight that you can control. Okay, not a weight that you're bouncing or you're doing ballistic repetitions with. Okay, you want a weight that you can control. And as I said before in the first question, both on the eccentric and the concentric phase. What happens when you go to failure and the tension starts to come off the muscles? Now your synergist muscles start to assist. So maybe it's your biceps in the case of a row. Okay, and now your joints start to assist. So maybe it's your elbows. And now your tendons start to assist. So maybe it's your forearm extensors and your forearm flexors. Not good. So I've always thought, you know what? I'm here to stimulate, not annihilate the muscles. Lee Haney's quote, not my quote, but it's true. Okay. So I don't take any sets to failure. Even when I do drop sets, I don't take it to failure. Okay. So I'm a firm believer in keeping time under tension, keeping rest periods, again, minimal. But most importantly, you want to make sure that you can preserve your joints, tendons, and ligaments. And in order to do that in a safe and efficient manner, you don't train to failure. Okay. It doesn't make you hardcore to train to failure. In fact, it kind of makes you an idiot. Okay. So who wants to get injured? If you're injured, you can't train. I've had this conversation. I had this conversation earlier today with one of my clients who strained his bicep doing one arm rows. And I said, today we're doing arms. You have to be a complete moron to go in the gym and go maximum intensity on biceps, knowing that you have a strain in your brachialis. Okay. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your bicep training down to about 70%. We can still maximize your triceps. Your triceps are fine, but we don't want to turn that strain into a tear. Okay. He understood. But a lot of people, they're like, no, I'm just going to pop some Advil, put on some Tiger Balm or Voltaren, and off I go. Bad idea. Okay. So you want to preserve your joints, ligaments, tendons, keep stress where it needs to be on the muscle bellies. Do not train to failure. You're only asking for problems in the long run. All right. Okay. Okay. Sorry, lost my spot. Okay. Nick, how many days a week should the average person realistically train for optimal results? Okay, well, again, this will depend on what your goal is. Okay, so if you just want to get overall healthy and fit, 2 days a week, that's great. If you can throw in some cardiovascular activity on top of that, like walking 30 minutes a day, going for a bike ride, a swim, whatever, even better. Okay, but two 45 to 60-minute weight training sessions a week, that should be well. Good. Now, if you want to see significant improvement with your physiques, your physique, I should say, and your aesthetics, and your performance in the gym as far as strength, you want to take that up to anywhere from 4 to 6 days a week. Okay. And the reason for that is because if you're trying to, let's say, sculpt your physique, you want to build a bigger chest, a bigger back. You want to build more defined biceps, more defined deltoids. You want to build striations in your quadriceps and your glutes, whatever it may be. Okay. You have to give more priority to each muscle group. And you can't do that by only training twice a week. Right? And that's why I use that analogy of if you're trying to build a business, you wouldn't be able to build a business working on it twice a week. You have to put in the time. Most people who are trying to build a business are in there 7 days a week. So you have to apply the same rules for your body. If you truly want to build an aesthetically pleasing physique and you want to see, if you're a guy, if you want to see bigger chests, you want to see bigger delts. If you're a woman, you want to see your glutes lift up higher. You want to see your legs look leaner. You've got to be in the gym training on a regular basis. Okay. But if you're just training for overall health and fitness, 2 days a week is fine. Okay. So that really depends on the individual. I mentioned this, I think it was last week on the channel, or the week before. If you are a beginner and you are brand new to this, even if you are like dead set on, I want to change my physique right away overnight, I still advise you to start off at 2 days a week and build from that. Do 2 days a week for 2 to 3 weeks, go up to 3 days a week for 2 to 3 weeks, go to 4 days a week, and so on like that. Don't just go from 0 to 100. Okay, not a good idea. Because again, you'll burn out, you'll be so sore, and you do risk injury because you have to remember you're new to this. So ease into it. And if you can get better results with doing minimal work, why not take that route for now? Okay, because I can tell you as you progress with your physique and your training, it only gets harder. It doesn't get easier. So you have to put in more time, you have to put in more effort into your training and into your diet if you want to continue to see significant improvements in your physique and in your health. Okay. So to answer that question, if you are someone who's just training for overall health and fitness, 2 days a week in the gym with weights, and if you can, 2 or 3 days a week outside doing some form of cardiovascular activity. So that could be walking, running, swimming, biking, just something that was working your heart. That should be sufficient. If you're someone who is trying to take your aesthetics and your physique up to that next level, my recommendation is to be in that gym from 4 to 6 days a week, working each muscle group 1 day a week. Okay, so that could look something like day one chest, day two back, day three shoulders, day four arms, day five legs. If you want to add a 6 day, you can prioritize maybe have 2 leg days, 2 back days, however you see fit, whatever your muscular imbalances are, or whatever you think you need to prioritize more on your physique. I'm just going to grab some water here. All right, next question. Okay. Nick, how do you structure your own workouts now that you're no longer competing? My workouts actually stay the exact same. I haven't changed my workouts very much. I mean, I changed some exercises from time to time, but I used to do that too while I competed. Um, and usually I just do that because either maybe I'm bored with an exercise or maybe I'm no longer feeling that exercise is working well for me, or I take it out for a few months, I bring it back in. So I'll do that from time to time, but my workout routine itself stays the exact same. Um, I still have 2 back days. I guess actually one thing I've changed is I no longer have two leg days because when I used to compete, I used to have a quad day and a hamstring and glute and calf day. So I trained legs on two separate days. And the reason I did that because when I competed in bodybuilding, you are judged a lot from the behind, and you really need to bring out those hamstrings and glutes and calves. So I gave those muscle groups their own specific day, in addition to working quads. But because I no longer compete and I'm no longer being judged by my physique, I've now just put leg day into one, and usually I'll just do two or three quad exercises, one hamstring exercise, and one calf exercise. Um, with back though, I still like having two back days. And the reason for that is I find that back is such a large muscle group. And I noticed that for me anyway, and this is not for everyone, but for me, I noticed that if I'm doing, let's say I start the back workout off with pull downs, by the time I get to rows, I'm gassed and I can't really contract my lats properly. And if I start with rows, by the time I get to pull downs, I can't contract my lats properly. So I put all my pull downs on one day still, and I put all my rows on one day. So day one for pull downs would something like a wide grip lat pull down, a reverse grip lat pull down, a closed grip lat pull down, and I'll even do an isolateral lat pull down. And I'll finish up with like a straight bar pullover. So I'm working my lats. And then on a row day, that could look something like a bent over barbell row and then a T-bar row. And I'll throw in a wide grip cable row, and I'll do a seated neutral grip V-bar row. And I'll finish up with maybe some one arm dumbbell rows and maybe some pronated grip dumbbell rows as well on an incline bench. So I really like to hit the back with 2 days, but that's about it. I mean, besides the leg day, I've pretty much kept my training the same. I still do bench press. I still do squats. I know there's a lot of people, I know a lot of guys, especially that they always say when I stop competing, I'm no longer going to squat because people hate squatting. I'm like, I never said that because I knew how beneficial squats were. So I've always kept squats in. One thing I've always done too is I've kept my max squat at 315, and that's the max I lift. Um, I've kept that for like 10, 15 years. No, 15 years. I haven't changed it. I know that I could lift heavier than that. I don't see the benefits though for me at my age and at this part in my career why I would go heavier. 315 feels good to me. I can bang out 10 reps. I feel it where I need to feel it, which is going to be in my quads, glutes, and hamstrings. I don't feel any stress in my back. I don't feel any stress in my knees or my hips. So why change it? Okay. So again, that goes to show you you don't have to keep increasing your weight because I still have pretty decent legs. Okay. So I don't, nothing's really changed as far as the training itself. I still do drop sets. I still do supersets. I still do basic straight set training. I'll throw in circuit training from time to time. So really nothing's changed. The only thing that's probably changed is the diet. Whereas now, thank God, I can eat less food. Because when I used to compete, I was eating up to 10 to 12 meals a day. Now that I no longer compete, I can just have 5 meals a day, maybe six. And that might sound a lot for food for a lot of people, but you got to remember from going from 10 to 12 meals down to 5 to 6, it's cutting it in half. So I actually enjoy that more because I don't constantly feel full. Actually, I constantly feel hungry, which is good because I never fully eat where I feel like, oh my God, I can't eat anymore. I never want to be stuffed. I always want to be a little bit hungry. Okay, so that's how I eat. So, but that's it. That's pretty much the only thing that's changed is the portion sizes, but the actual food itself is the same. I still eat the same foods now that I'm no longer competing that when I did compete because I like those foods. Okay, but portion sizes, they've obviously decreased. I'm now walking in around 205 as far as my body weight. When I used to, well, in the off season anyway, when I was competing, I was around 235, 240. So I'm leaner now and I feel better. My cardiovascular endurance is much better. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits from not competing. But I mean, the fun part about competing is obviously competing. So there's always a goal too. But as far as the training is concerned, it's pretty much stayed the same. Okay. Nick, what are your thoughts on fasted cardio? Effective or overrated? Incredibly effective. Okay. And the thing is, in my opinion, it's underrated, especially in today's climate, because a lot of these new age generation like fitness influencers are always like, no, it's bro science. And listen, I've had this argument for years. Fasted cardio works. I don't care what these fitness influencers are telling you, it works. Okay? Do you have to do it? No. Can you do cardio on a full stomach and still burn body fat? Sure. Will you burn it as efficiently? No. Because if you're doing cardio in a fasted state, whether that be first thing in the morning as soon as you get out of bed or immediately after your resistance training workout, so you've utilized all the carbohydrates from your day into that workout, or most of them anyway, you're using fat as your primary fuel source. Okay. If you're doing cardio after having chicken and rice or a bowl of oatmeal, you're going to use those carbohydrates from the rice or the oats towards your cardiovascular activity. Okay. So that's not a bad thing, right? But you're not tapping into your fat cells faster. You're not using fat as your primary fuel source. You're using carbohydrates as your primary fuel source. So will you burn fat? Sure. But you're going to burn fat faster and more efficiently if you're using fat as your primary fuel source. So it only makes sense to do cardio in a fasted state. Okay. And a lot of these new age fitness influencers will also say, well, you're going to burn muscle. The amount of people that I hear telling about you're going to burn muscle, it drives me insane. It's like the people who say you have to have a post-workout shake immediately after your last set in the gym. I'm like, why? Well, your body's going to go into a catabolic state and blah, blah, blah. No, that doesn't happen. You don't just lose muscle because you're not getting protein within 5 minutes after your workout. Okay. The body doesn't work like that. And usually the people who are, on these little crusades and telling people you have to have a post-workout shake and fasted cardio doesn't matter. They're just looking for ways to reinvent the wheel. I think they're looking for clickbait. And, I stick with what's tried and true and works. I'm open to new methods. I am. But I don't like when people start saying, well, those old methods don't work. Of course they work. Okay. You look at guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lee Haney, Dorian Yates. You look at Phil Heath. I'm naming like top Mr. Olympias, Ronnie Coleman. All these guys did fasted cardio. Okay. It works. Okay. So you don't have to get under this whole, oh, you don't have to, or sorry, you don't have to do fasted cardio, but I don't want people to believe that, fasted cardio is bro science. I guess that's what I'm saying here because it really frustrates me when these new age trainers and these new age fitness influencers are constantly just trying to reinvent the wheel. And I think they're just looking for shock value and for clickbait. And I don't like that because I think what happens is, first of all, you're bad mouthing a method that has worked for decades. Okay. And it's also an insult to people who've used those methods to drop body fat and put on muscle. Because basically you're saying those people were idiots. They didn't know what they were doing. Ronnie Coleman has 8 Mr. Olympias. I don't think he's an idiot. Okay. Dorian Yates has 6. Lee Haney has 8. Okay. Arnold Schwarzenegger, I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's pretty successful too. Okay. And all these guys followed those methods and they work. Okay, so if you want to do cardio on a full stomach, go for it. Will you lose fat? Sure. You're exerting energy. You're going to lose fat, but I guarantee you're going to burn fat faster and more efficiently if you do it in a fasted state. Okay. Okay. Nick, what's the most underrated exercise for building overall mass? Underrated exercise. Mm-mm-mm. If I'm thinking underrated exercise, you know what I'm actually going to go with? Standing barbell military presses. Because people know squats work, people know deadlifts work, people know bench press work. I don't see a lot of people doing no standing barbell military presses. That's like a compound movement. I'm not talking about Olympic lifts because that's a little bit different. I don't see anything wrong with Olympic lifts, but that's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about taking a barbell, you take it from a squat rack, push it up over your head, bring it down so it's parallel to chin, back up, back down again, controlled reps. So it's working your anterior delts. If you're standing, you don't have support from the bench. So your lumbar region is not supported. So the only people that can do this safely and effectively are people who have a strong core. I include barbell military presses, standing barbell military presses in every single shoulder workout I do. I did that when I competed, and I still do it to this day. And I feel that it doesn't just work your anterior deltoids, but it works your core, works your lower back. It just overall your tricep. Hell, it even works your pecs to some degree. But I do like to put it on a shoulder workout because the primary muscle group being worked are your anterior deltoids, right? But it just works so many different muscle groups, really, because when you think of it, a standing barbell military press, as I said, you're working your core, your lower back, and your delts, but you're also working your trapezius, your rhomboids, your lats, your pecs. All these muscle groups, your triceps, are stabilizing that bar going over your head. So it's such an effective exercise. And to me, that's a great mass builder that I don't see a lot of people doing in the gym. And I think a lot of people think, well, that's a dangerous exercise. Well, it's only dangerous if you yourself have back issues. So if you've had a herniated disc, for example, you probably don't want to be doing standing barbell military presses. But you could do seated barbell military presses, right? And I think again, the issue of standing barbell military presses for a lot of people. There's a limit as to how much you can lift because you are standing. But to me, that's okay because again, unless you're trying to be a power lifter, which in that case you're going to be doing more like Olympic lifting for those overhead presses. You don't need to be lifting crazy amounts of weight. Okay. So, I mean, I think I max out at like 135 on a standing barbell military press for 10 reps, which I can do. And I feel it in my muscles. I don't feel anything in my joints. And I feel that that's a great exercise to add in. So, if you're not doing those and you're looking to add on size, that's my recommendation. Throw those in. They're a great exercise. And yeah, in my opinion, they're the most underrated exercise when it comes to building mass. All right. Okay. Okay. Uh, so I don't know why I keep losing my spot today. Uh, okay. Nick, do you recommend counting macros for everyone or only for advanced trainees? So, when it comes to macronutrients, I'm a firm believer in not just counting the macronutrients, but also making sure that you're paying attention to the micronutrients. I don't count calories, but when I work with people on their nutritional plans, I do count their macros. So I can tell someone when I'm designing a nutritional plan, hey, this week we're going to bring you down to 180 grams of carbs, 70 grams of fat, and 200 grams of protein. And the reason I'm able to do that is because I'm plugging in their portion sizes for all the foods. So I know if I'm giving someone, let's say, I don't know, a scoop of whey isolate, well, that's going to be anywhere from 25 to 30 grams of protein, depending on the whey isolate they're using. Okay, it's pretty easy to figure that out. You could use ChatGPT if you want as well. I've been doing this so long though, it's just all up here though. Okay, so you want to use a cup of egg whites. There's 30 grams of protein. So it's easy for me to calculate that when I'm working with someone. For the average person, though, who doesn't really know much about dietary nutrition, it's a little bit more difficult. It's a bit more of a pain in the ass. And, the thing is, though, if you truly want to take your physique to the next level, in my opinion, you do need to pay attention to your macronutrients and your micronutrients. And now in this day and age, with all the fit apps out there, I mean, God, it's so easy to do. You just plug in your food and it calculates it for you. Back when I was coming up, you had to figure that out for yourself. Okay. And so there's something to be said about that. And one thing too is that if you are trying to, whether you're trying to build muscle or you're trying to lose body fat, the one thing I tell a lot of people is you kind of want to stay away from variety. And people are like, well, I need to have variety in my diet. I'm like, look, but if you have too much variety, it's very hard to figure out what your macronutrients are. Okay. But if you have like a few choices, like for example, let's say breakfast, you could have either oats with a scoop of whey isolate protein powder, and you can have that with like a tablespoon of peanut butter. Okay. Or if you don't want that, you could have cream of rice with egg whites, and then you can have that with almond butter, right? And okay, maybe you don't want that. Well, maybe I'm going to have some Ezekiel bread. Okay. And on top of that, I'm going to put maybe some cashew butter. And for a protein source, well, I'm not sure. Maybe I want whey protein powder today, or maybe I want egg whites today. So you can choose one or the other. Okay. So you have a lean protein source in there. Okay. So what I'm trying to get at though is that you have some variety, but it's not like, well, today I don't want oatmeal, so I'm going to have a bowl of Frosted Flakes. No, because the sugar in the Frosted Flakes, right? So again, these are things you have to pay attention to. So I always tell people, look, if you're truly serious about adding on muscle and losing body fat, we can't have too much variety in your diet. And that's where I find the implementing a cheat meal from time to time is very beneficial for people. So the diet doesn't become so mundane and you're doing it over and over again. You're tired. Oh my God, it's the same thing. No, you have one or two cheat meals to look forward to each week, and then you get back on track. Another thing, when you don't have too much variety in your diet, it's very easy to figure out what foods work for you and which foods don't. And what I mean by that is which foods are going to cause bloating, gas, diarrhea, upset stomach. When people have all these issues, they think automatically they have IBS. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they have Crohn's, sometimes they have colitis, but most people, it's none of the above. Most people, it's just their diet, and they have too much things in their diet. So it's really hard to figure out what am I allergic to, or what am I sensitive to, right? Is it too much gluten, right? Is it too much sugar, too much carbs, too much fats? But you don't know because you're constantly having different things in your diet. Okay. So then people go see like a naturopath, for example, and they put them on an elimination diet. And then, oh, wow, you're allergic to this, or maybe you're very sensitive to caffeine, whatever it may be. Okay. And they think, wow, this is amazing. I'm like, yeah, but if you just stick to a basic bodybuilding diet, which is a lot of whole foods, minimal to no dairy, okay? Making sure you have no processed sugars in your diet, that generally works for most people. I mean, I have a client on my roster who has Crohn's, and I've been working with her for 10 years, and I do her diet. Her diet looks very similar to most bodybuilders' diets. Obviously, there's certain foods that we can't have, but for the most part, 85% of her diet is a bodybuilder's diet. Okay. So all these people who think that they have food allergies and that they have severe IBS syndromes, I mean, they very well could. They very well could. But in my experience, most people are just eating way too much variety in their diet, and then therefore they can't figure out what's causing the issue. The amount of people that I've worked with over the years that are lactose intolerant and don't even know it, and I have to bring it to their attention, it's unbelievable. They're like, well, no, I always consume dairy. I'm like, yeah, but you know what? Now you're in your 40s and you're starting to get a really upset stomach every time you have like cheese or milk, whatever it may be, right? Oh, but I love dairy. I'm like, I understand that, but dairy is not the most healthiest thing that you should be putting in your body. Okay. So it's very important to understand not just the macronutrients, but the micronutrients, the quality of the food that you are consuming. And don't follow these generic formulas that tell people that they should be having this many portions of dairy a day, this many portions of fruit a day, this many portions of grains a day. Because if you're going to do that, just go follow here in Canada, the Canada Health Food Guidelines, which are still outdated in my opinion. Okay. So you want to make sure that yes, you're counting your macronutrients, especially if you're trying to lose body fat or build muscle. And in this day and age, especially if all the apps out there, or you can work with a coach trainer that will do that for you, it's pretty easy. So to say I don't have time to do that, well, then you're not serious about changing your physique. Because in my opinion, if you're truly, truly serious about transforming your physique, losing some body fat, building some muscle, you should have a good idea of how many macronutrients of each, or sorry, not how many macronutrients, but how many macronutrients of each macro you are consuming each day. So you should know what roughly how much carbs you're consuming, roughly how much fats you're consuming, roughly how much protein you're consuming, and most importantly, roughly how much sugar you are consuming. Okay, that's another one to really pay attention to. All right, last question here. Uh, Nick, how do you approach cutting without losing much muscle mass? Well, again, this is exactly why I don't count calories. Okay. Because if someone comes to me and says, I want to lose 50 pounds, my first question will be like, 50 pounds of what? Like, what do you want to lose 50 pounds of? Like, that to me, do you just want to lose 50 pounds for 50 pounds? Do you want to lose 50 pounds of fat or do you want to lose 50 pounds of fat, muscle, and water? When I ask them that, most people say, well, no, I want to lose 50 pounds of fat. I'm like, okay. I need to be clear on this because you just told me you want to lose 50 pounds. Because if you just want to lose 50 pounds, we can do that. That's easy. I just need to starve you, give you an hour, maybe 2 hours of cardio a day, and you'll lose 50 pounds. Hell, you'll probably lose 50 pounds in 50 days if I do that. You'll feel like shit, and you'll probably look like shit. Because what's going to happen is you're going to lose muscle. You're going to lose water. You will lose some body fat, but you're going to feel like crap. Okay. So if you want to lose 50 pounds, in this case of fat, you have to pay attention to your macronutrients, not your calories. You have to make sure that your protein levels are somewhat elevated. Okay. You have to make sure that your carbohydrates are somewhat decreased. And depending again on the type of body I'm working with, whether it's an endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph, fats I usually keep moderate for everyone across the board. Where it gets tricky though is once someone starts losing weight and everything's going well, we hit a plateau. And that's where me as a coach, I have to be able to troubleshoot and go, okay, does this person respond better to a low carb, high fat diet, or do they respond better to a low fat, high carb diet? And I can tell you across the board when I work with women, women typically do really well on a higher fat, low carb diet, whereas the guys tend to do a little bit better with a moderate carb, lower fat diet. Okay. I don't know why. It's been like that for years though. And whenever I'm working with a woman, whether it's to get ready for a particular event, whether it's a fitness competition or a wedding photo shoot, I find if I'm trying to dial them down and get them to lose body fat, a higher fat, lower carb diet works. And protein levels are usually somewhat high. If, say, the woman's like 120 pounds, I'll usually keep protein at least at a gram per pound of body weight. So it's about 120 grams per day, usually a little bit more. But that works really well. And then for the guys, again, I find that if I go too high in the fats, it kind of slows down their metabolism too much. So again, we're talking about someone trying to lose weight here. Okay. So again, well, for them, I'll keep the fats a little bit lower and I'll keep the carbs a little bit higher. Complex carbohydrates still. Okay. So that's what I find works really well for both genders. Okay. But again, it really depends on the individual you're working with. Because if you are working with someone who is an ectomorph, and that's someone who loses body fat very quickly, has a very fast metabolism, you have to be careful because if you start taking out too much macronutrients or the wrong macronutrients, they will lose muscle. Whereas someone who's an endomorph, someone who easily puts on weight, whether it be body fat or muscle, you can actually starve them a little bit. You can take out some protein. They're not going to lose muscle. It takes a lot for those people to lose muscle. So I'll do that with clients from time to time. But the only way I can do that is if I understand their body type. Obviously, people I've been working with for 10 plus years or even 20 years in some cases, I know their body type. Things change as they get older for sure. But for the most part, I know how to dial them in for whether they're training for a certain event, or they're going for a vacation or a photo shoot, or they just want to look good in a dress or suit, whatever it may be. I know how to get them in shape because I worked with them before. If it's a new client, though, it's going to take a little bit more troubleshooting on my part just to learn their body and learn how they're going to respond to the changes and revisions I make along the way. But in order to make sure that any weight you do lose when you're trying to cut or when you're just trying to lose fat, not weight, you don't want to lose muscle, you don't want to lose water. You want to make sure that protein is, like I said, it's somewhat elevated. And to make it easy, put it this way. If you weigh 250 pounds and you're starting to cut, try to keep your protein at 50 grams. And then if you go down to 240 pounds, take your protein down to 240 grams. I tell people that it's very simple that way, okay? And the carbs and fats are a little bit more complex. So there's a little bit more tweaking and revisions that go into that. It's a more customized protocol. But if you're not sure about protein and you're so scared about losing muscle, just keep that 1 gram per pound, and I'm talking about overall weight. Even if you're 50 pounds overweight, still count that weight. And that's a good way, a good mark to start at. Okay. And then you can kind of cruise down from there. Okay. But that's what I do with most people when the goal is to lose muscle and not just lose weight. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, October the 27th. As a reminder, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at @fitcosgrove_. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for supporting my YouTube channel, my online coaching business, as well as my in-house personal training business here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I truly do appreciate all the support and all the feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. Thank you all again, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.